Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Change Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Harvig, and today we have a very interesting guest, and I can't wait to to meet him, talk about what he does because it is so important. These are very important tips he's going to give you. He is the creator of Certain Growth Solutions. What is that? It's a value-based consulting company to help you create clarity, confidence, and conviction. So I would like to welcome Joey Chandler. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. I love all those words that you use because I think each and every one of them have a specific um, need. We have to have clarity. I learned that years ago when I worked with Forbes Riley for a while, and I was just all over the place. And she says a confused mind does not buy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So certainty and clarity are so crucial these days, not just for buying, but just for mental well-being. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much chaos. There's so much stuff coming from us from politics and business and relationships. And, there's just so much. And then add in changes with AI and things like TikTok. You just have this constant bombardment of stuff, and it's really really easy to lose that clarity, lose that certainty, and you end up kind of in a place of hopelessness. So it's not just for business, but it's just really for life. Like being able to create clarity about who you are, what you're about, and how you do things is critical.
Yeah, and I sure agree with that because I am seeing, as we all are, um, AI everywhere on every application that I have now. I either have to go in and turn it off or I have to shut it because I don't always want notes with everything that I'm doing, or I don't want this, or I don't want you to structure my sentence.
Yep.
And it's very, very frustrating. So what kind of advice do you give for people that are maybe trying to pull back from AI a little bit?
Well, I think the best thing to do is actually clarify your own core values. Like I'm a core values guy, so they always go there. What I found really helpful with AI is you clarify your values. Like mine are connection, curiosity, and fun, and then you actually add those to the custom instructions in an AI, in your AI of choice. And what that does is that allows that takes all of the infinite amount of data that you can get from AI and filters it through your own values. And
Ooh,
that way, the results that you are getting are more aligned with how you would do things, and it's far easier to say, "Hey, that's a good idea," or "That's a bad idea." So it reduces the decision fatigue that is so prevalent right now with AI use. But that
ooh,
all starts with knowing your
decision fatigue. I love that. I
yeah,
never heard
yeah,
anyone
because
use that. That's very accurate.
yeah, when AI can give you, I mean, literally can give you, a near infinite amount of solutions to any one problem. The challenge isn't finding a solution, is finding the one that works for you.
Gotcha. Now, when you started this company, Certain Growth Solutions, where did it come from in your heart to start this company?
Yeah. This is the funny part. I was struggling with some names. I was working on it, and I asked my son. He's like, what do you? He's like, I'm like, what do you want? He was probably 16 or 17 at the time, and he's like, I want certainty and I want growth. And I was like, okay, certain growth. Like that was it took me a little while to accept it, but it really was. He just was like, I want certainty. And when you think about it as, a teenager, that he was whatever he was, 16 or 17 at the time, his whole life had been uncertain. I mean, everything. There had been wars and COVID and just there wasn't a time in his life where there wasn't uncertainty. So he was kind of an early person for me to say, hey, I want more certainty in our lives, and ultimately when you get clear on your core values, you get grounded in your own values, and then you start to use those values on a daily basis to achieve goals and solve problems. You start to create more certainty despite the chaos that's around you.
Now, isn't that interesting? At 16, I would not even think of that. Of course, that was many, many years ago, but it kind of brings us to what are our kids facing these days? You know, what we did back in the day is so different from what they're doing now. Do you ever work with young adults, or are you
I don't work.
mostly with us older folk that
Yeah,
still aren't sure?
most of my work, most of my like official work is with older folks, but I have a bunch of nieces and nephews and their friends, and I'm on TikTok, so I see I think kids these days they're just dealing with massive amounts of uncertainty. They look out in the world and they have access to seeing us struggle, seeing the adults struggle. There's not an adult in the world right now that has the answers. And so when we tell them, hey, you can be anything you want, you can go for your dreams and do all of this kind of stuff, they see us and they're saying, they're kind of calling it like BS. And it's really frustrating. It's also really scary because while there is so much more opportunity to create the life that you want right now than when we were growing up, there's also all of that opportunity creates a huge amount of uncertainty. And so it's more and more critical that kids start to understand who they are and understand their values, their own values, and start to think about how they can create a life themselves rather than relying on what's out, looking at what's out there. And so I think yeah, there's huge opportunities for young people, but it's also lots and lots of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's crazy. And with uncertainty comes lack of confidence, right? Because they really don't know which way they're going or what they're doing. Because I struggled, I'll be honest, I struggled with confidence myself because I do something a little different as a healer. You know, a lot of my things are unseen. So it took me years to be able to speak out about what I do and own it. How do you create confidence in someone?
Yeah, there's really three steps on that. Is the first off, we get clear on their values. We get them down to three. Mine are connection, curiosity, and fun. So we get them down to something like that. Then I give them a series of questions. There's 6 questions that you can ask that will help you apply your values to a particular goal and take action. And then you practice. You just repeat that process over and over again. And what ends up happening is that when you get clear on your values, you get grounded, you have a sense of like, hey, this is who I am, like no matter what, this is who I am. Then when you have a system for producing results, you have the ability to, you have the ability to produce results. Like in this day and age, we have to be able to achieve, overcome challenges, achieve goals. And when you can do that in a way that aligns with your values, you're like, oh, I can be me and produce wins. So that builds up your confidence. And then the third thing is practice. It just, we all have far more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are. So it takes some repetitions to really be ourselves and produce results. But once that happens, you end up building your confidence. You know who you are. You know you have a system. You know you have history with it. And you're like, okay, I can do these things. I can do hard things, even if I'm struggling right now.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense to me is to find our our core. Who are we inside? I've had coaches that have said, no, I always have liked to use the word mentor, because coach, I don't know, it's so broad. And so he goes, no, you can't use the word coach, or you can't use the word mentor. It won't work. It won't work. So when you come up against someone who's telling you what to use, how to be, what to say, because I've had that, you can't sell that way. You got to sell this way. You got to say this, you got to say that. Well, that goes against the core of who I am. So how do you adjust and make room for someone who knows certain things, but is going against your grain? How does that work?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think a lot of us are very stubborn. Like,
I think almost all of us, right?
yeah, like and for for to a good amount, and maybe sometimes to a bad amount. Like we're stubborn, and ultimately we're going to do things our way. Like and we see this because how many people have taken courses, workshops, read books, and can get that what they're doing is a good idea. What the information that's being presented is a really good idea, but it doesn't work for me. And you end up doing it your own way. There's millions and millions of people have done that. So when I was, myself included, that 100%. So as I started doing this, I just started thinking, like, how can I work with somebody like me who is well-intentioned, stubborn, and is going to do it their own way? And so excuse me, my coaching really comes down to, what are your core values and what do they say to do in this situation? And for some people, like, how they sell will come out of their values, and then they'll develop their own kind of system. Now, they'll take information from other people, of course, and we'll have some ideas, but at the end of the day, they'll do it their own way. I have a client who is a PR and branding expert, super, super talented. One of these guys that would read, he would go to workshops, he would read books, but he was just constantly implementing new things. And he would implement them really quickly, but they wouldn't stick. Like, they just wouldn't stick. And it's one of those things, because you're like, it's sort of producing results, but something was not quite right. And we worked with him. His values were love, harmony, and fun. And we kept applying it, and he ended up actually creating this whole sales system where he basically, on the very first call, or within the first couple calls, he says, like, look, my values are love, harmony, and fun. If I don't think we can have that, I'm not going to bring you on. And he just got really direct about it. And now his business is booming. He's changing, but it all came from what worked for him. Because I never would have coached him to say, tell your people that if you don't get love, harmony, and fun, you're not going to work with them. Like, I never could have done that. He came up with that from himself. Wow. And now it's working for him.
That's amazing. And you had another life before coaching, correct?
Yes.
What was your epiphany that brought you to understand that, you know what, I want to be a coach and I'm going to be a darn good one? Where did that come from?
So I've been involved in like self-awareness work and transformation work since 1998 or something in that realm. So, for 20 something years now. But what really led me to the core values work was in the early 2000 teens. I ran a business where I would do tribute videos, where we would get, like, if you want to do a video for your mom, we get 30 or 40 of her best people saying what they love and appreciate about her. And we would take all those videos and put it together and show it at a birthday party or an anniversary or retirement. And I did a few hundred of those videos over a couple years. And what I started to see was that in those videos, there was always a theme, that the person was about love or joy or happiness. It wasn't loud. It wasn't overt. It wasn't like everyone said the exact same thing. But because I spent so much time editing and re-editing all those videos, I started to get a sense of who this person was. And I did videos from people from 7 to 90 all over the world. And so I just knew that this thing was there. And then I started reading books on knowing your purpose and knowing your why and values and all that kind of stuff. And I just had this idea that if I could bring this thing that is clearly in our lives already, I could bring it from the background of our lives to a foreground, that would be good. And that was kind of the initial kick, because I know, because what I know now and what makes me a good coach is that I know that you have something at your core. I know this not because of anything brilliant on my part, but because I know if I did a video for you, we get 30 or 40 people, there would be a theme in that video, and that theme would represent who you are. And if we just bring that from the background to the foreground and start to make greater use of it, the better off you will be. So that's like my foundation of the core values work.
What a great awareness you had, though, to see that, to see that right in front of you. And it was it like a light bulb moment?
It wasn't. There were two moments there. As I was editing them, I do remember thinking like, I don't know what it is, but I'm hearing so much good things about people, because literally this was, day after day after day of people saying something nice about somebody else. And I remember thinking like, I don't know what it is, but something from all of that goodness is going to wear off on me. And I didn't know what it was. I just knew something was going to show up. And then the other kind of, there was an epiphany moment. It was one day I remember having a really bad day. I don't know what the day, I don't know what I was angry about. I just know I was having a bad day. And it somewhere it clicked in my head. I said, okay, if someone did a video for me, there
Ooh.
would, if someone, got 30 or 40 people for me, there would have to be a theme in that video. And that theme would have to represent something like love or joy or happiness. Like that has to be there, because I'm no different than anybody else that I've done the videos for. And in that moment where I was feeling really bad, I was like, okay, I got love or joy in me somewhere. I just have to find it.
It's there.
And
It's there. It's
there,
just
and
buried a little.
it was buried.
We
And
got to get the shovel out for you, Joey.
definitely there was some shoveling. And but I remember kind of going like, I almost didn't want to see it, because then that meant I had to go live that way. Because if that's true for me, that I have to go out and live true to that thing that's who I am, rather than all the anger and the frustration and the doubt that I was experiencing. So that was a very those were, I don't think of those moments, but I think those are the two that kind of like just gave me like an undeniable confidence that people have values, and we have to figure out. Then it took me a good 6 or 8 years to figure out how to make use of it, but I knew it was there.
Wow, that's so great. And we all have something inside of us, but do you find that some people are actually like you, either afraid to find it, they're afraid what people think or what your cores are, or to just be open with people about, here's what I believe, here's who I am? Sometimes we put that face on of what people expect, not who we are.
I think the biggest problem in that realm is that we think we have to be perfect at it. That we think like my values, connection, curiosity, and fun. When I first started exploring that, I thought I had to be that 100% of the places in my life. But actually the videos showed me, because the videos I did were for everyday moms, dads, and grandparents. Like I did some very, very famous people, but also just, everyday folks. There wasn't anything like particularly profound about them. And I knew from them that they had their life. There were places where they were really great, and there was places where they struggled. And what that showed to me was that we have our values, but we're not perfect at it. There's places where we live true to them, and undeniably, or they live true to them. And there's places where, we're struggling. And that is true. That is true at every single day. It doesn't matter. Like there's places in my life, where that holds true right now. And when I got that, when I got that, and when I share that with people, there's a sense of freedom, because you're like, oh man, I don't have to be perfect, which is, nice. But then there's a sense of like, but I want to be perfect. I want, I
Come
want
on,
to be
man,
perfect.
look at me.
Yeah, I want to be perfect. And if I'm never going to be perfect, what's the point? That sort of thing. So we end up thinking we're not enough, or like we're not, who we are is not enough, or I got to be somebody else to succeed. And so we end up having more experience being who we think we should be rather than who we actually are.
Yeah.
And that's where we struggle. And the idea here is that once we help identify their values, which doesn't take very long at all, and we can teach them we can teach them a system. This is where the practice comes in. You just have to put in the time. Like there's no way around it. And because our doubts and fears are always going to be there, and we just have to learn how to address them.
Yeah, I love that. And even to this day, as much as I've learned, as many gifts as I've been given, I still have that like, oh, I don't know enough. I need to take another class or read another book. And people are like, you can't do everything. You just can't do everything. Stick with what you've got. But it's like I have this urge to be more, I guess. Where does that fit into all of your, clarity, confidence, and conviction?
Yeah. So the main thing that comes up anytime you set a goal, like, hey, I want to accomplish this, or I want to grow my business this way. I want to ask that person out on a date. I want to go on a vacation. As soon as you set a goal, what I've seen is that a fear or a doubt is going to come up. And that fear or doubt will be, I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. This won't work out for me, whatever. People won't like me. Those are all mine. I'm guessing, you may have your own.
Same.
But uh, but those are always there. And what I've started to see is that and this is part of the system, the 6 questions. Question 3 is to say, hey, what's my goal? I want to grow my business. And then question 4 is to just identify what's the fear that comes up, because you just want to acknowledge them, because we're always going to have fears, because our brain is designed to keep us safe. And by putting fears out to us, it's keeping us safe. It's protecting us from the disappointment, or letting someone down, or getting embarrassed, or any of that kind of thing. So we just want to acknowledge those fears, and then we can ask, what do our values say to do? And that will give you a list of ideas, and you can take action. But I think we've made a bit of a mistake regarding doubts and fears, with the idea that we can get past them. That if I do enough work, if I am aware enough, if I have done enough healing and all that kind of stuff, that we can actually get past our doubts and fears. And I just don't believe that to be true anymore. And for me, where this really hit was actually just a year ago, or a little over a year ago, when the U.S. invaded Iran for the first time. And I woke up, and I see the news, we're at war, and I just had this thing of like, oh crap, because my son now is he was, and then 18, he's 19 now, like prime draft age, right? If there was to be a draft. And immediately my brain went to like, oh crud, and like it went to a whole bunch of things. And it dawned on me that there is no amount of therapy, no amount of awareness work, no amount of healing work, that where my brain having a fear because we're at war and that might impact my son and people like him, like that's a reasonable reaction.
Absolutely.
Like to be like, oh, I have no fear now because, I'm like, no, it's a reasonable reaction to have a fear. The problem is that you don't want to operate on top of it. So now every day we acknowledge those fears and then say, hey, what do our values say to do? So we're not trying to get rid of fears, because that doesn't work. We say, hey, we acknowledge them, and then what do our values say to do, and then take the actions.
I love that. And, as I reflect on certain things, maybe 10 years ago, fear and being safe, I missed a lot of opportunities that I certainly would scoop up now in a heartbeat. So I agree with that. Fear is paralyzing at times.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's always going to be there. That's why you need a system to address that. You can't think like, oh, if I'm all of a sudden I'm a good person, I'm a confident person, I won't have any fears, because that's just not true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the C's is conviction. And I want you to talk about that. What does that mean to you, and where did that come from?
Yeah. So the idea is that you get clear on who you are, you get confident that you can actually do it, and then you have some conviction, like, yes, I not only can I do it, but I am going to do it. And it's the sense of this repeated, like, I can do this over and over again, and no matter the circumstances, I know that I can get clear on my values, I can apply them in a certain way, and then I can take action. And there's this conviction, the sense of like, yes, I can do it. It's not just confidence, but it's I will do it, that where it comes from. And so it's just like waking up knowing that you can move your life forward, and that you will move your life forward. It's a pretty powerful feeling.
Yeah. And that little gap between I can and I will, what do we need to insert there to get us to that point where we're doing what we were afraid of?
That is practice. And
Practice.
it's also recovery, because at any given, you can do anything, whether it be you're working out, growing your business, trying to create a relationship. You will have days or weeks where you miss, where you don't do what you say you're going to do, where you stumble. That will absolutely happen. And one of the great things about core value work is that your core, you could lose everything, but your core values will still be there. And so even after you have a bad day or a bad week, you can take a deep breath and say, okay, what are my values and what do they say to do in the situation? It will help you get restarted. And if you know that you can restart in any situation, then you have the conviction that you can keep going. You will keep going. Like, it may not go as fast as you want, it may not happen as fast as you want, but you know that you can make it happen, and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going.
Like that little train that could going up that hill, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we are almost out of time here, and you have given us so much amazing information that I personally will be utilizing. But just throw some nuggets out there for us. If someone is doubtful, if someone is a little bit scared, where do they start?
Yeah, honestly, they should go to my website, certaingrowth.com, and there's a link there for what I call the refinement system, and that will help you refine your core values, get them down to 3, and then I'll show you the questions that you can use to start taking action. So they go there. That's the very first thing. And I do this with people that are struggling, making millions of dollars. It's always the same thing. We figure out their values, and then we start to say, hey, where do these values show up in your life? Where they're not? How can we apply them? Because at the end of the day, that's what you have. That's the most grounded thing. So it doesn't matter. So if you're really skeptical, I'm like, awesome. Let's figure out your values, and let's put them to use. If you're super excited, I'm like, great. Let's figure out your values and let's put them to use. Like, it's the same process over and over again, because who you are at your core, that's who you are. Again, that's the videos. I go all the way back to the videos. That no matter what, we know you have values, and when you get clear on those values and you start to use them, and then you practice using them over and over again, that's when good things happen.
Wow. I know I would be fun. I would have to put that in there, because that's always been an important aspect of my life, that I've got to have fun in my job, fun in my work, fun with the people I hang out with.
Yeah.
So
And actually, that's awesome. And that's actually one thing that I do. Of the 3 words, I require one word to be what I call a flow word. And a flow word is fun, play, creativity, adventure, curiosity, something in that realm of language. And I did that because when I first started working with people and their values, they would come up with values of integrity and authenticity and excellence or something of that sort, and their faces wouldn't change. Like, they'd be good words, but their faces, there'd be no
no
these are people that I
emotion
had worked.
behind it, huh?
These are people I had worked with. I had had drinks with. I had done trips with. Like, these are people I knew, and I started to ask, like, well, isn't creativity or fun part of who you are? And 2 things would happen. They'd be like, yes. There'd be this explosion of energy coming out. Yes. And then they would say, I didn't know that could be one of our values. And what I realized is that the way that we have been taught core values is way too heavy, way too serious, and it's missing one of those words. And it turns out that from positive psychology, the work from Barbara Fredrickson, she has this thing called broaden and build, and she points out that words like fun and play and creativity and adventure, they broaden our awareness. And it's super critical. Back in the day when we were getting chased by lions and tigers, we wanted just straight focus, right? And we wanted to run. That was very needed. But the dangers that we're facing these days, like when you go into a boardroom or a meeting with your boss, you want to have a wider awareness so you can bring in new ideas. And that happens when you put in a value of fun or play or creativity. So it's awesome that you have fun. Like, you see that, that's totally great. And I think it's something that everyone should have at least one of those words. And then the other part is that our values, I don't know where our values come from. I don't know if it's a spirit, a soul, an energy. It's just the way the human body is evolved over time. But they were with us for they were with us when we were young, and
Mm-hmm.
as no matter what, even if we didn't have the language for it, the energy of them would have been there. And so obviously fun, play, creativity, that would have been at least part of your life. And even if it's not 100% a part of your life now, it is part of your life somewhere. And so putting those words in there just, it broadens your values. And it makes, this is the best part, it makes core value work so much more fun, because
Oh,
when you can have a conversation about like, hey, how like I I did a little bit of work with a woman, and her one of her values was adventure, and the next day she's like, oh my god, I hope this isn't too crass. She's like, I've been thinking about sex and adventure all day, like, and and she realized that
boom.
she had, yeah, she had held back her for the past few years. She'd been holding herself back because she's like, I need to be more serious, I need to be this. But part of her, who she was like, sex and pleasure and passion, all that kind of stuff. And it really just opened up her mind. And again, I never, ever, ever could have coached her on that, but she took adventure, applied it to an important area of her life, and it opened up. It just
Wow.
opened it up for her, because then she's just like, well, what does adventure mean to me? And 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 she's like, well, this is what sexual adventure meant to me when I was younger, and now I'm a bit older. Like, it's not the same thing, but how can I still bring that sense of adventure in? And just
Yeah.
led to an amazing conversation. So thank you for bringing
That's
up
am-
that sense of fun.
and that's amazing. I just hope it didn't go back to the 80s because we all know what happened then.
Yeah,
But
no, there's no, it's very clear. But and that's the part. And this is the other
yeah.
part. People ask all the time, do my values change? And I think our values don't really change all that much, but how they get expressed.
Uh,
Adventure for us in the 80s is going to be different than adventure for us now. But
right. Yeah.
it's still adventure.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on today and talk about all this because I, for one, have learned so much. It's so interesting. I thank you for your time. And for anyone out there, I want to let you know that there will be links in the description where I'm going to have this up on YouTube a little bit later. And please reach out to this gentleman. If not today, tomorrow. Some of the information that he gave us is very unique, some I've never heard before, and I myself will be exploring many of the things that Joey talked about today. So thank you, everyone, and I will see you next Monday.